Imagine waking up on a Sunday morning. You're just a kid. You walk next door to your friend's cabin to see if they want to come out and play. The door is unlocked. You step inside, and what you find inside that cabin will haunt you for the rest of your life. Deep in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Northern California, there is a place called Keddie. Not really a town, more like a forgotten corner of the world. A small mountain resort community where families came to escape city life. Cheap cabins, fresh air, dense forests all around. In 1981, people didn't lock their doors in Keddie because why would they? But on the night of April 11th, 1981, someone walked through an unlocked door and committed one of the most brutal, most heartbreaking murders in California history, a crime that destroyed an entire community and haunts investigators to this very day. Living in Cabin 28 was a woman named Glenna Sharp. Most people called her Sue. She was 36 years old, a single mother who had recently moved her 5 children to Keddie to start over after a painful divorce. Sue had 5 kids: Sheila, who was 14, John, who was 15, Tina, just 12 years old, and 2 younger boys, Rick and Greg. Also staying with them that night was a 17-year-old family friend named Dana Wingate. 6 people, 1 small mountain cabin, a mother just trying to rebuild her life. That Saturday evening, the family had a few friends over. Nothing unusual. Just a normal night in a small mountain community. At some point, Sheila, the oldest daughter, decided to spend the night at a neighbor's cabin nearby. Everyone else stayed home. Sue, John, Tina, Dana, and the 2 little boys, Rick and Greg. And sometime after the last visitor left that night, someone entered Cabin 28. What happened inside that cabin was so violent, so savage, that even seasoned detectives who responded the next morning were visibly shaken. These were not people who shocked easily, but this was different. The next morning, Sunday, April 12th, 14-year-old Sheila walked back to Cabin 28 to come home. She opened the door. She found her mother, she found her brother John, and she found Dana Wingate. All 3 of them had been murdered, bound with electrical wire and medical tape. The level of violence was extreme. Sheila ran screaming to a neighbor's cabin. When police arrived, they found Rick and Greg, both young boys, alive, hidden in a back bedroom. They had been there all night. But when investigators searched the entire cabin, they realized something else. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was gone. No body, no signs she had escaped. Just gone. 3 murdered, 1 missing, and 2 little boys who would carry the sounds of that night with them for the rest of their lives. The investigation that followed was, to put it simply, a failure. Plumas County was a small, rural area. The sheriff's department had never seen anything like this before. Evidence was mishandled. The crime scene was not properly secured. Witnesses weren't interviewed the way they should have been. And here's something that has frustrated people for decades. Rick and Greg, 2 living witnesses who were inside that cabin that night, were interviewed. But investigators at the time believed they were too young to give reliable information, and so their accounts were largely set aside. 2 living witnesses inside that cabin, and the investigation moved past them. As the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into years, the community of Keddie began to fall apart. Families started leaving. The resort slowly emptied out. People were terrified, and for good reason, because in a town that small, where everyone knew everyone, the killer was almost certainly someone local, someone people saw at the general store, someone their kids played with. And that realization destroyed Keddie. By the 1990s, the resort was practically abandoned. Cabin 28 still stood, empty and decaying, a constant reminder of what had happened inside its walls. In 2004, it was finally torn down, but the mystery remained. For 3 years after the murders, 12-year-old Tina Sharp was listed as a missing person. Her family held on to hope. They had to. Then, in 1984, 3 years after that terrible night, a partial skull was discovered near Feather Falls, California, about 25 miles from Keddie. Through dental records, the remains were eventually confirmed. It was Tina. She had been murdered too. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. In 2016, over 30 years later, more of Tina's remains were found. in a completely different location, which means someone had moved her body, deliberately, more than once. Someone went back. Someone was covering their tracks. For decades. Over the years, investigators focused on several suspects, but one name kept coming up again and again. Martin Smart, a man who lived nearby, a man who was known to the Sharp family, a man who had been at or near that cabin on the night of the murders. After the killings, Smart eventually left the area. He remarried, then divorced again, and it was his ex-wife who came forward with information that sent chills through everyone working the case. She said that Smart had told her things that suggested he knew exactly what happened inside cabin 28. She also said that a hammer, believed to be one of the murder weapons, had gone missing around the time of the killings. Martin Smart died in the year 2000, never charged, never arrested, taking whatever he knew to his grave. A second person of interest was a man named Bo Bubede, a close friend of Smart's, also believed to have been in the area that night. Bubede also died before any charges were ever filed. In 2016, after years of renewed pressure from the public and from investigators, the Plumas County Sheriff's Office made a significant announcement. They stated publicly that they believed they knew who was responsible for the Keddie murders. They named Martin Smart and Bo Bubede as the primary suspects, but both men were already dead. No arrests, no trial, no justice. Think about that. Sue Sharp's family waited 35 years for answers, and by the time those answers came, the men believed to be responsible were already gone. Now let me share some details about this case that most people don't know, because the surface of this story is disturbing enough. But when you look deeper, it gets worse. Rick and Greg, the two young boys who survived, were found hidden together in that back bedroom with covers pulled over themselves. Investigators believe they may have witnessed parts of what happened in that cabin, and they lived with those memories throughout their entire childhood. A note was reportedly found, written by Martin Smart to his therapist, that some investigators believe contained what amounted to a partial confession. The exact contents of that note have never been fully disclosed to the public, even today. And perhaps the most chilling detail of all, for years after the murders, people in the community of Keddie quietly suspected who was responsible. They talked among themselves, but no one came forward, because in a small, isolated mountain town, sometimes silence feels safer than truth. The Keddie Cabin Murders remain one of California's most disturbing and unresolved cases. We know who likely did it. The sheriff's office has said so publicly. But a broken investigation, decades of delay, and the death of the primary suspects mean that true legal justice never came. The system failed Sue Sharp. It failed John. It failed Dana. It failed Tina. And it failed two little boys who had to carry the weight of that night for the rest of their lives. What strikes me most about this case isn't just the violence, it's the silence. A whole community that stayed quiet, an investigation that collapsed under its own failures, a family destroyed, and two men who died as free men. The mountains of Keddie are still there, the forests are still there, and somewhere out there, the full truth is still waiting to be told. If this case moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you want justice for this family, hit that like button. Subscribe to Crime Lore so you never miss a case, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think justice was truly served in Keddie? I want to know what you think. I'll see you in the next one.